The inclusion, just to at this point in time, the way we're structured is always us and them. So it's us who are not disabled per se,
I
and it's them who
see.
are disabled per se,
I
and it's all.
see.
And I just would love for it all to be us
Yeah,
together.
I agree.
Wasn't born with a disability, but I started developing a disability when I was 13, 14 years old, and it's a progressive form of disability. But I was very isolated, not because my family was isolating me, but because I didn't see people like me out and about.
Welcome back to another episode of Community Conversations. And today, as you can see, it's a little bit different. It is our finale episode, meaning that we are completely done with season 2. And I have a powerhouse sitting here with me at the table. We have Dr. Taleh Ghanima and Miss Sabika Shaban. So I am excited. We're just going to get right into it. This roundtable is a little bit different. We're just going to ask if you can kind of share briefly what you do and what your role is in the community, and then we'll get right into the questions. I'm looking at you first.
My name is Sabika. I'm affiliated with Hamad bin Khalifa University, where I work on disability-related research. I'm also a founder of Qatar Disability Resource, or Qadr, which is a community that brings together mostly families who are raising with children with disabilities in the country, as well as other stakeholders who are service providers or professionals in this space.
Awesome.
My name is Tada Altaji. I'm a U.S. board-certified pediatrician and hospice and palliative medicine physician, and I trained in upstate New York.
Welcome. That is a handful. Yes.
Hi, I'm Ghanima Al-Tawil. I am a disability researcher. I'm also a teacher or an instructor at Hamad bin Khalifa University, where I teach media accessibility.
Wow, this is what I mean when it comes to Powerhouse. I think you guys all play a huge role in the spaces that you work in. So being that we all work in different spaces and we are connected when it comes to the goal of inclusion, that's why I, asked for you guys to come on today's conversation. What does inclusion personally mean to you? Anyone can chime in.
The words that come to mind when I hear inclusion is respect, dignity, and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Autonomy.
The inclusion, just to at this point in time, the way we're structured is always us and them. So it's us who are not disabled per se, and it's them who are disabled per se, and it's all. And I just would love for it all to be us together.
I agree. I love that, actually. I love just the perspective, and I think that everyone has their own perspective of like inclusion and what that looks like. So when did you all realize that this was the work that you wanted to, be a part of, inclusion, advocacy, or care? What part of your life, you said, hey, this is my new purpose?
Okay, for me, I wasn't born with a disability, but I started developing a disability when I was 13, 14 years old, and it's a progressive form of disability. But I was very isolated, not because my family was isolating me, but because I didn't see people like me out and about. And then when I went for my master's, that's when I learned about media accessibility and that sort of thing. And I was reading a book I forgot her first name, but her last name was, she's a French actress, La Brea. And it's called Cry of the Gull. And there was, when she was a child and she's a deaf actress. And when she was a child and she wanted to learn more about music, she would bite the guitar her uncle is playing so that she can feel the music and the vibrations of the music within herself. And that's where everything fell in. All the pieces fell in place, and it was like, okay, this is what I want to do. Yeah. Everything made sense at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, actually. No, I've not heard of this actress, but I'll definitely look into that. I think that, sound wave is like really important, and that's essentially what it sounds like, she was able to thrive in that space. So, wow, thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? At any given time, we can just...
It helps if you look at the person and you're like, oh, that's my cue.
Well, I don't want you to feel like you have to answer every question also. So I just want us to chime in and tag in whenever you feel. So
okay.
I'm happy.
I can go. Okay. I think for me it was pretty easy. It was 14 years ago when I had my daughter, and that's when I started as a parent in this space. She was diagnosed very, very early with a genetic condition, and so we kind of knew that life is going to be a little bit different from the way we imagine it.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, I had my son, who was then diagnosed with autism, and so that's when it was like, okay, enough is enough, and then we started really looking into roles of like advocacy and other forums in order to really drive some sort of change.
Yeah. I'm going to just like kind of go off topic too, not topic, but just kind of ignore these questions too. Why do you feel inclusion is so important? Like this should be something that is just like so secondhand, but it's not. Why do you, I guess it's not why is it important, but why do you feel like it's not a secondhand, nature for us?
I think, unfortunately, following inclusion or trying to make it part of our community is something that requires extra effort. And I think that is the rate limiting step. And I feel that in general, humans are creatures of habit. And so if we see something that is a little bit different than what we are used to, it becomes a challenge. And sometimes people are just not willing to go for the challenge.
Yeah. I think it also does come secondhand for certain people that are like exposed to it. So for example, for me, at a young age, my mom worked in a home for adults with disabilities that were kind of focused on independent living, but it was also owned by my godparents. So it was a part of our family from forever, for as long as I can remember. And being that my mom was a single mom, she took me to work. So for me, it was so, I couldn't understand why people didn't have this mindset. And then you go into the world and you're like, wait, what? I'm the only one that has this mindset? Something's a bit off. So I think exposure also plays a huge role, which goes back to families exposing their children to this quite early. And this is just the mindset. Compassion, empathy, understanding that we're all different, So, I definitely think that for me, that is kind of what I think about of like for me, I've kind of went into that space.
It's so interesting you say that. I grew up here, and at school, I remember in grade 6, we had a science teacher who facilitated like this trip to Hamad Hospital every Saturday afternoon. Or every Saturday morning, and part of it was to go, and they have a little playroom which I believe still exists in the hospital, and one of the people who took care of the playroom would bring children in that morning, and the science teacher had us, we were like 10 or 11-year-olds who would go and sit with children who were admitted to the hospital, either children with medical complexity or children who were there for a long time. And it really I felt bridged the gap, because just as you're saying, if you're not exposed to people with disability, it's not going to come natural. Correct. And it just won't be your instinct. And I think it just really fostered this willingness to, I guess, ignore the elephant in the room, if you will, and really just go forth with.
I think for me too, I think that this is why advocacy is so important. This is why modeling what it looks like is so important, because you remembered that, right? And it also was a lifestyle. You knew every Saturday, this is what we're doing, and that maybe in the beginning you didn't have that understanding, but then once you were in that space, you completely understood 100%. The purpose.
And I think the funny part was that the feedback was, so many people said, oh, my parents don't want me to go, or I don't think that this is, and this, I don't want to say that this was too long ago. This was probably like in the mid 2000s, but still, I remember there being a large stigma surrounding this trip. And for me, it was one of the happiest parts of the week, where finally on that Saturday morning we went and we played together, and we would do activities that we would prepare, and it was so much fun. And it was just another activity of the week. But I think what really helped was having pillars in the community, be it my parents who really supported the idea, the science teacher that came up with the idea altogether, and then we actually implemented something very similar in med school, and we sort of did the same thing where students that were interested in pediatrics did a similar visit to the hospital every week or so. And so just as you're saying, it almost becomes a legacy that you're able to pass along. And so no matter what stage of life you're in, it just becomes part of the community.
I love that you were able to like take that into your own space. You were taught it, and then you taught it to the next community. That is for me what I feel like, it should look like, as far as just trying to advocate, at least in that space. What would you say has been the most powerful moment in your journey that reminded you why you do what you do? Because we all have completely different roles, but when we come together, it's absolutely like amazing and beneficial in the community. So what would you say for you?
I'd say that, it's very hard to kind of zone into those one moments, right? It happens in plural of plurals, right? But if I were to kind of think back on why am I doing this? So anyone who knows my daughter, they know that she's, you know her really, really well. Ghanima's had really wonderful encounters with her too.
You have to meet her.
I know. I feel like it would be such a privilege.
Okay.
And the thing is, she's vocal. So,
Yes.
and she's verbal, she's vocal, and she's got an eccentric personality, and so she knows how to connect with people around her. But then I look at my son, who is the complete opposite. He prefers his own bubble and his own world. And I realize that someone like my daughter, she can really tell her story. But then what about people like my son, who is so inward looking? And I remember we were in a park together, and I was holding his hand, and then suddenly he lets go, because he's aiming to go to this one family, and I so chase after him. And here is a boy who just about 2 years prior would not acknowledge a single element in his environment, would not even say a word. He started speaking super late. And when he goes up to this family, and I'm trying to figure out what's calling him. And it was a little girl in a stroller, and she's wailing. And all he's doing is patting her on the head and saying, "Baby, stop crying, baby, stop crying." What was so powerful about that was like, these are the stories to tell. Like, just by that one act, he instinctively had a way to connect with another human being, and he contributed. He brought relief to someone, and the girl stopped crying. Maybe because he was thinking, like, what is this all like coming up to me for? But the point is, I think that's one of those reasons why I think I do what I do, is the fact that I feel like we just need to tell more stories.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, as I said, like, growing up, this was like my space. So I had like 35-year-old friends, and I'm like, "Hey Johnny, how you doing?" I'm like 8, like, "You want to play tic-tac-toe later? Okay, I'll see you after lunch," because I went to work with my mom. And I think just like there was one person specific that like was having a hard time like going into work, because a bus would pick them up to take them to work, but that person didn't start work yet. But all the friends were going to work, and so I'm like 8, like, "You're gonna get a job one day." I have no idea what any of this really means, but I'm like encouraging, and I don't know if I really believed it, right? Like I wasn't sure, like, I don't really know, but I know that I was taught to encourage, and eventually this person got a job, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, you got a job!" And like we were just so happy, to see this person that felt like, "Oh man, I'm not gonna get a job because A, B, and C," and then this person now gets a job because A, B, and C. So I think that was like my beginning of like, oh man, I think I can do this. And then I'm like advocating for everyone, like any school, any place, you will know who Nikki is, because she is going to say something, whether you like it or not, and that was taught to me at such a young age, and it's impactful, it's important. We need people like that to advocate, for people that may not have the personality to advocate, but their words are just as important. So yeah, I would say. Anyone else want to share any?
For me, it would have been probably when people started dreading me speaking up.
And I love that you speak up. Okay,
Yeah,
I love
no,
that for
because
you.
that's when I knew that when I'm speaking up, it's because I'm not settling for whatever they have to say. And this is when I got the nickname of the troublemaker, because I was like, okay, yes, because I am not settling, I am not being quiet, and nobody can tell me you don't know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And when people started avoiding having me in conversations, it's like because you want to do something off a checklist, not because you want to do something that's actually beneficial. So you avoid having me because I will not settle for that. I will not accept that. So that's why it's like, okay, then I am on the right track. Because I want to make you uncomfortable in the sense that you will change where it is beneficial, not just because I have a checklist I have to cross off.
Yeah. And I think that that is absolutely true, and that is a thing across the board. And, you know, I think that you standing up for yourself that's enough. That period. You stand up for yourself, period. But also, I think that it also teaches that space, like, there's so much more that you're missing, and it should not be check off the list. It should be, what do we need to do to make this space more inclusive so we can invite more people like Ghanimé and Ghanima. So, oh my gosh, I'm going to continue to.
It's fine.
For how many years? I think 1 year. I'm going to call you Ghanimé. But yeah, I think that's really important, and I think I love your, you know, whole stand. I'm like team you, okay? So yeah. How about empathy, right? I think that not everyone's taught empathy. For me, my environment taught me empathy. But how do you think we can keep empathy at the center of the work that we do when it gets overwhelming? Or how do we teach empathy? It's a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, but also, I actually was having this debate with my mentor a few months ago because I don't like the word empathy.
Okay, tell me.
I also don't like the word advocacy.
Okay.
And we were debating that, and we went into the philosophy of the words and that sort of thing. So that's why we came up, I settled, not came, settled for activism and compassion.
Okay.
And why is that? Because for compassion, it's understanding while also striving to make a change. You're not just understanding.
Very passive.
It's very passive, and that's why empathy and advocacy, they're very passive. You only feel, or you don't exactly do.
I see.
So with activism and compassion, you take the extra step of doing. So
She's corrected me before as well. It's like, no, say activism.
Can you
say
correct
advocacy.
me? This is the second thing you've not corrected me on. No, but I could totally see that,
so,
actually.
no, because it's still
Activism.
some, when people say terminology is not as important as
No,
you
I
make
think
them
it's-
seem to be. It's like, it is quite important
Yeah.
because they reflect your thoughts. They
Yeah.
reflect your position. They reflect your understanding
Yeah.
of things. So, I think Sabika, you're the one who calls me the terminology police. So,
I love that.
But activism
Yeah.
and compassion. I literally use advocacy and empathy all
Yeah.
the time. So, yeah, thank you. I appreciate
No,
that.
because from your work, it goes beyond just speaking or understanding about them. You are actually doing. You are equipping persons with disabilities in vocational skills, that sort of thing. So you are not advocating. You are activating.
We need her here every day. Okay? Thank you. And I think that I really hope that, you know, someone takes away from that there is a difference. There is a difference, and I didn't really realize that. I kind of stayed in that space. And I think as a young child, advocacy and empathy is what you're taught. And then you just stay in that. But as you said, it shifts, it grows. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you. If you could describe the community that we're trying to build, and not just in Qatar, this should be a global, and I'd love to hear like your perspective, especially coming from like the States, but also like being born and raised here. There's like so many different dynamics when it comes to just your space that you're working in. What could it be? Like if we could describe the community that we're trying to build in one word or sentences, what would it be and why?
You know, as soon as I heard your question, the first term that came to my head was judgment. I think by human nature, you know, we've all done things a certain way in our life, and I feel that more often than not, when we see something that's done a little bit differently, we as a community or, you know, as a people can be very quick to judge. And I often find that taking a step back and, you know, reevaluating the situation and realizing that truly everybody does what they can with the circumstances that they have, and also just really building that tolerance and just as you're saying with compassion. I think part of this is that, you know, when we see a situation where things can be done better, striving to make them better is one thing, but also the way in which we do that is another.
Yeah.
I think it can be very off-putting to see a situation and go in and say, this shouldn't have been done this way, this is the way we do it, what you did was unfair, etc. I think part of it is just being compassionate in the way that you want to change things.
Yeah.
And you know, proposing a new idea or trying to bring something new in a way that is in fact compassionate and in a way that is not, you know, not done to sort of you want to rectify the situation, but
Yeah.
you want to do it gently and in a way that's actually going to get people to change.
Yeah, I hear you. Because there's no point if I'm just coming in here screaming, like the message is just not getting delivered. But
Right.
so the message is important, but also the delivery.
It's the way in which we do
is
it.
just as important. Interesting. Anyone else want to chime in on that? I feel like you have
the
something
message is
coming.
important, and
Yeah.
also delivery is important. But unfortunately, when it comes to the disability community, especially if you are a person with a disability, you're often silenced, and you're told this doesn't concern you. Well, it does concern
It-
me.
absolutely.
It concerns me more than you.
Yeah.
And the fact that I know more about it than you would know about it, so it's good to have that conversation with me. So instead of you planning and saying this is good enough,
Yeah.
it's like, oh no, come back to me.
Yeah.
And this is one of the another reason why I was called a troublemaker, because it's like, you telling me this ramp is a ramp, it's not a ramp. It's a slide, it's a roller coaster. Depending
Literally, I hear you. I hear
depending,
you.
doors, why are they so hard to open?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of stuff that they're like aesthetics, and it's like, I hate that word now so
Yeah,
much,
yeah.
because I was told more than once aesthetics is more important than function.
And that's not
So
true.
it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So this is where I was like, I am passionate about things, and I will speak to you in that
Yeah.
passion. But because you are ignoring me, you are not listening to me, and you actually sideline me and silence me as much as you can, so that when you say we are doing this, you are doing this, you have nobody to critique you. So, and this is where speaking in a certain way doesn't
I hear what
fly,
you're saying.
doesn't
I
fly.
hear-
You
so
have to
it's
become a
both-
little bit,
Yeah, both perspectives. I hear what you're
It's
saying.
so interesting you say that. I often find that, you know, I don't want to step. You know, I guess what I'm trying to say is that as a physician, you can be as compassionate as possible, but the reality is that you will never be the parent who has that ailing child, and you will never be the patient who is, you know, fighting a chronic disease or a life-limiting disease. So when people say the term, I know how you feel, or I know this must be so, you know, this is so hard, I often find that that terminology is meant to portray compassion, which I'm sure that's, you know, that's probably how you feel, like, you know, I really want to help. But I also think it's very important as, you know, when people get knowledge and they, you know, learn about certain disabilities, it's important for us to define the line between, like, I am a specialist who has studied this and I am somebody who actually has this condition, because our experiences are very different.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you know, somebody can go to work and then you come home and you have your own life and children and so on, but the person who has a disability, a condition, a life-limiting disease, you know, whatever that may be, is actually living
Right.
with that, and it's not something that they can be separate from.
Yeah.
And so I think it's very important as people in the community to recognize our limitations too, because that's how we can grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just as you're saying, it's funny because as a pediatrician, when I was younger and I would walk into the doctor's office, I loved my pediatrician because he would always look at me and ask me the questions, even when I was really young and I couldn't answer for myself. And that was something that I learned to do in training as well. And just as you're saying, you know, at the end of the day, this is the community that we're serving. It makes no sense to assume that this is what they need, as opposed to bringing them in and say, you know, go ahead and tell us exactly what you need and how can we make this better for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and I think this is why this roundtable was so important, because had I just interviewed you, then it would just be one-sided. But then it's like you hear this side of the story, and it totally, and both parts make sense for sure. But perspective is key, and being able to get everyone's perspective is what's really important. And something else that stood out to me is collaborate. Don't tell me what I need, ask me what I need. And I think that makes so much sense. How can, someone come into your home and say, you're going to do A, B, and C, and you're like, this is my home. Like, it doesn't work out like that. So I do hear the collaboration and how important it is, to communicate and receive that feedback. That's the feedback that we need, not the aesthetically pleasing feedback, right? So I know we're running out of time, and the studio is going to kill me, but I'm going to ask 2 more questions and not make eye contact. But this is an important one for me, and this is like a global question, I think, and it's, if we could send one message to policymakers about disability and inclusion, what would it be? It's a good one.
It's a great question to ask. I think one lesson that policymakers can really take on board, what I've found historically is that it is a checklist activity. So if you are creating policies that do impact the disability community, as long as you have 2, 3, 4 people from there, check. But the community is so diverse.
Yes.
And there's so many intersectionalities. They come from such diverse backgrounds, whether you're talking culturally, economically, et cetera. And so unless you don't have that representation from across the disability spectrum, you're not going to be able to build policies that respond to those needs, and you're always going to be excluding.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the one thing that whenever a policymaker is designing things, policies, programs, talk to as many people from the community, as diverse as possible.
Absolutely.
Because you need to be able to capture that entire spectrum.
Yes, I agree. I think that's everything, 1000%. And that's the collaboration aspect, Anyone else?
No, I agree with you 100%.
You said it so well. You said it so well.
But I will add one thing. Policy actually is not just about legislation or anything like that. It actually is the reflection of the community, of the society's perception of that issue that they have legislation or policy for.
Yeah. I mean, it's a long fight. And I think that, maybe it's not the word fight. I think I just automatically.
We call it a fight.
And there are some people that are down for it. And, I think that sitting at this table, this is a part of the fight, is the awareness. So, I know we have a long way to go across the world. It's everywhere, in my opinion. Some others, more in other places, but it's definitely a world conversation that needs to happen. I think that's why representation is so important, and we're starting to see it in different spaces, but we have a long way to go, in my opinion. My last question, I think. If someone's watching this episode and is just starting their journey as a parent advocate, as a professional, or just wanting to better understand this space, what would be the message that you would want to leave them with? Dun, dun, dun.
I can go first.
Yay.
When someone's really early in the journey, I think whether it's a parent or a person who's discovered a developing disability or what have you, or a practitioner, the journey can be very, very isolating, but they have to know it is not meant to be a solo journey. This is a journey where you bring everyone together. So piece by piece, build your village, build your tribe that is going to be there with you, and you will find magic take place in terms of what that journey could look like. Don't make it a solo journey. Don't stay in that isolating bubble.
I love that. Anyone? I actually do want both of you guys, because it's our last question. But
for me, it would be, don't be afraid to make mistakes, because we learn from mistakes. We need to admit that they are mistakes quite often. But other than that, as Sabika said, we have to stop. It takes a village literally to do anything. And it's not just with persons with disability, anything
Yeah.
in life.
Yeah.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
And we are there. We exist. Know that. And I hope that you don't have as a difficult journey as the one we've had to grow up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that times have changed, things have changed, resources, all the things. And if used right, it's way better than what we, had back in the day. So as far as research and other things, so yeah.
Yeah, I was going to echo what you said. You don't have to carry this weight on your own. I think oftentimes we glorify people who do things on their own, and we say, great job, you were able to accomplish all of this on your own. But I think that the glorification is truly bringing the community together to achieve the goal, as opposed to feeling like you have to do it all on your own. And always remembering that you can't pour from an empty cup. In order for us to thrive, we must be able to care for ourselves too.
Yeah, I agree. You guys both, like everyone said, some really, really impactful things. And I think that for me, it's for sure the village, not pouring from an empty cup, but also knowing when you need a break. I think that that's a big struggle too. Like this whole journey, any journey is going to take, a toll on us, but knowing when to take a break and a breather during that journey also is something that is, at least for me in this season, I am learning, because I am the one that will put everything on my back and do everything on my own. And then I'm upset that I'm doing it by myself, but I've not asked anyone to help me or say, oh my gosh, I need help. And then I'm just, woe is me. So that is something that for sure I am trying to work on, is just taking a break and analyzing the situation. And of course, big dreams and all the things, but
I find that is sometimes harder than, like, asking for that help is harder than just carrying the weight all by yourself. So really, like, that is the strength, if you are able to sort of compartmentalize and delegate and say, this is what I am focusing on now.
Exactly. And that's the collaborative part that we talk about. Life is all about collaborating, I would say. That's the biggest thing that I have learned just in general. And if you can't communicate, then it's hard to collaborate. So yeah. But I do want to say thank you all so much for just, sharing your insights and your time. It's been absolutely amazing. And I couldn't have done this last episode without you all. So, yeah.
Thank you for bringing us on board.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Well, that concludes our finale. Season 2 is completely done. We ended off with an amazing roundtable with some amazing, powerful women that are doing great things in their individual industries. And for that, I am grateful. This is what community conversation is all about, is bringing the community together and having these tough conversations. It's not always going to be easy. So please know that you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and now we are on Apple Podcasts. Once again, thank you for tuning in to Season 2, and I will see you for Season 3.